Okay, now you can open your eyes. Now we are going for a brief Dhamma sermon. We were discussing a certain sutta which is called Kayagata Sati Sutta. I'll share the screen related to a document which I am continuing. So Kayagata Sati Sutta is available in Majjhima Nikaya. So this actually emphasizes Kayanupassana. You know that in 4 Satipatthanas there are 4 different aspects or positions. Main positions are given, main orientations are given. One related to the body, another related to feelings, and then towards the mind, and then various, we can say various phenomena. So in this Kayagata Sati Sutta, much emphasis is given to Kayanupassana. So there are several sections taken in order to improve our mindfulness with respect to various bodily activities, various bodily parts, various bodily processes. So we discussed a couple of them already. The first is Anapanasati, which is much familiar to us now. Actually, we discussed this in length in Anapanasati Sutta, where we actually explain according to the 16 steps, which is actually quite deeper, and that 16 steps actually touches not only Kayanupassana but also Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana. But in Kayagata Sati Sutta, Buddha didn't go to that length. He stopped at the Kayanupassana level, where he is talking only about becoming mindful of breathing, and then to recognize whether the breath is long, short, and comprehending whether it is the beginning, the middle, the end, and then calming down. So this is very much the Kayanupassana section of Anapanasati Sutta, where included in the Kayagata Sati Sutta. So much relevance is given to the body. So if one is able to confine one's attention only on these aspects, then we can understand, okay, still the mind is investigating various bodily phenomenon. That is, at the moment it is breath. Breath is one of the very subtle primary object, primary process of the body. So now Buddha is giving sort of a analysis of the breath. So if one is able to continue one's attention on breath, then Buddha says, so it is, so as a result of this practice, one would be able to keep one's attention closer to the body. Now typically our minds are getting distracted due to various reasons, but now if one is able to maintain one's attention more and more closely to the breath, as a result of that, the typical mundane kind of mundane kind of household thoughts, perceptions going to disappear, going to reduce. Instead, our mind now getting more and more focused on the body. Very much like you are keeping a chair and then inviting the mind to come and sit on chair. The chair is now inside the body, something like that. Suppose it's like very much like someone is always going out of the home, but now if the home is appear like very pleasant and everything is available, fridge is full of food and all the other facilities are available, then there is not necessary to go out. Now you all are, I think most of you are now working at home because of the COVID situation. So now you don't need to go out of the home, because now you may have a laptop, you have internet, maybe you can have the groceries also full in the this fridge. So likewise everything is available at home, so there is not necessary to go out. Similarly, if mind is fairly practiced or trained to be with the bodily process, then more and more mind tends to stay closer to the body. As a result, Buddha says mind becomes steadied, quiet, and brought to singleness and concentrated. Now all are actually with respect to the body. In a way we can say now mind attached to the body. Mind is associating body, but this is also necessary at the beginning. Because otherwise if we release the mind go out and distract and go for daydreaming, fantasizing, so many issues are there. So we are using body as an anchoring point for the body, for the mind. So as a result, now distractions are less, mind tends to stay with the body. Then we discuss similarly about 4 postures. Those are sitting posture, standing posture, lying down posture and walking posture. Those are the main 4 postures. Now we can use them also to improve our mindfulness, to establish mindfulness. And Buddha doesn't stop there, so he says, Yogi understand accordingly however his body is disposed. Whatever is the posture, then one can be with that. So one is using the body as a tool, as a vehicle to keep the mind. As a result, mind does not go out in search of various other distractions, in search of happiness, in search of pleasures, or in search of various regrets. Because now the body itself has become a kind of a peaceful environment, peaceful home for the mind, so there is no necessity of going out. So this is the sort of the theory or logic behind this. So we are using certain bodily processes, bodily postures in order to keep our mind closer to the body, attached to the body. Then we went on to clear comprehension, where instead of just restraining ourselves or restricting ourselves only to the main postures, now Buddha wants us to expand this practice. How to connect this with our day-to-day activities? When we are eating, are we able to be mindful about it? When we are drinking, suppose you are drinking a tea, are you able to be mindful about it? Are you able to recognize its taste? Is it hot? Is it cold? How about the amount of sugar? Is it too much sugar? So are you able to recognize all these? Suppose you are wearing clothes. So at that time, are you able to feel all the touch sensations? Suppose you are wearing a shirt. So when you are putting your hand to one side, putting your other hand to the other side, when you are wearing it, are you able to be mindful about it without distracting yourself to various other activities, other future plans? Are you able to just wear your clothes mindfully? And suppose you are going forward, are you able to be mindful about when you are coming back? Are you able to be mindful? You are looking sides, you are looking front. So all these one can be mindful. And Buddha doesn't stop there. He is telling even the defecating, urinating, one can do mindfully. So we can understand now, if we are skillful, we can use all the day-to-day activities to develop mindfulness, to enhance mindfulness. So this is the beauty of the practice. It is not that we always have to go to a very special place and stop all the other external distractions, find a very silent place. So this is ideal actually, but this is not enough. I mean, we have to have such ideal situation, ideal environment in order to go fairly deep. But at the same time, in our day-to-day activities, we have to establish mindfulness so that we may not destroy, or we may not reduce our already developed qualities. We are not allowing to reduce or going to go in vain of our various already developed qualities. So that actually can be done only when we are expanding our attention, expanding our mindfulness to various day-to-day activities. Now this also helps to keep our mind closer to the body, because mostly we are using various bodily activities. Now suppose we are getting to the other section, that is, now Buddha is taking us a different perspective. So far various activities are involved, but now Buddha is giving a separate perspective about this practice, That is where, considering this body consists of various components, various parts, typically we have some kind of a compactness view. So we think this body is me, this body is mine, this body is beautiful, this body is ugly, this body is old, this body is young. So likewise we have some kind of a perspective considering the body belong to me, or considering the body as I, or considering body as myself. But on the other hand, when we are looking at it separately, looking at it in different perspective like this, where Buddha is giving us a kind of a list in order to look at this body not as something one unit, but as a collection of various bodily parts. Now these are sort of typical 32 parts. Most of you may be familiar with it. Sometimes we call it as Dvattinsakara, Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho. Likewise, some of you have heard it. So the body consists of body hair, head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, then bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestine, mesentery, contents of the stomach, feces and brain. Now these are kind of a list. Actually this list sometimes Buddha called as earth element, because you can see most of these parts, the majority is the earth, majority is kind of the hardness. So we'll actually get into the element meditation on next time, but for the time being you can understand among these 32 parts, the first 20 are actually hard particles, where the earth element is the majority. Now if you consider teeth, so it is so hard. If you consider say lungs, if you consider bones, all these where the sort of hardness is the most predominant component. On the other hand, the bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, now these are another side where actually consisting in the body, but they have some watery kind of a situation where they are flowing, blood flowing, sweat flowing. So they have the nature of flowing. Now if one is able to sort of contemplate like this, so the wrong view of compactness, considering this body is something one unit, something one thing, now that kind of a wrong idea, wrong perception now going to dissolve, because one will understand this is like a combination or accumulation of various parts. Suppose if I give you a small example, when we are getting 4 tires, maybe 4 rims, and then axles and engine, then the bonnet, say steering wheel, and all like so many components, if we fix them properly in a particular fashion, in a particular style, then ultimately we call it a car, we call it a vehicle. Similarly, when these components are get together and assembled in a certain manner, so we call it a human body, and we call it a man's body, male body, female body, say dog's body, bird's body. So likewise we have certain characteristics, certain styles. So accordingly these parts can be fixed, or these parts can be assembled. Ultimately we call it a body, a male body, female body, something like that, human body. But if we analyze it little closely, we can't get a one unit, we can't get one thing, but ultimately we have so much of components, little components. Actually the list is so long when we are analyzing it too closely. Now Buddha is giving here a kind of a very general sort of an explanation. He hasn't gone to extreme depth, because the purpose is not here any kind of an anatomical explanation, even though some amount of anatomy is here. But the main idea is to have some kind of a real perspective about this body. Now, when we understand this body has phlegm, say tears, fat, grease, spittle, urine, etc. So if we had any kind of a lust towards this body or towards another's body, so that lust cannot exist when we are contemplating like this. So basically the idea of this section is to take our attention or take our mind to the middle level. Assume that you are now going through some kind of a thinking, sort of a proliferation, which is arousing some lust in the mind. Now the mind is burning and the mind is filled up with various perceptions, various signs. Now that indicates the mind is becoming lustful. Now if you are immediately go and sit for a anapanasati or any kind of sitting session, it could be difficult because the mind is not settled, mind is not in the middle range, mind is not in a balanced position. So it is necessary for us to bring our mind to a balanced position. So this balancing is done through this kind of a meditation, where you are giving the proper perspective, the real perspective of this body to the mind. You are sort of remembering. Because of our ignorance, since we have forgotten this reality, now mind filled up with various lustful thoughts. But when again mind is awakened to this kind of a reality, when we are allowing the mind to understand this reality, then mind can't further continue that kind of a lustful thought, because there is no point of having a desire to these kind of filthy components. Say when we consider body hair, head hair, say teeth, nails, sinews, bones. So likewise, when we consider each and every part separately, they are not attractive. They are not interesting. I mean, if you find any kind of a head hair while you are eating your rice, probably you might get sort of upset with your wife because she hasn't properly did the cooking, because so much of dirt is there in your plate. So this is something that we internally have. But altogether, when we fix everything and have a very nice beautiful skin, and you do all various makeup, then it is appear like beautiful. Now that kind of a false view being dropped when we look at it properly, when we look at it in the proper perspective, then we can't have that sort of a lust towards this our own body or towards someone else's body. As a result, mind comes to the middle. Now Buddha is giving a very beautiful simile here. Buddha is telling, just as though there were a bag with an opening at both ends, full of many sorts of grain, such as hill rice, red rice, beans, peas, millet, white rice, and different grains are there. Now assume that there is a bag, both sides are open, and all these different grains are mixed. They are mixed inside. Now one man put one's hand from one of the opening, and he is taking some amount of grain, and now he can clearly recognize, okay, this is red rice, this is white rice, this is peas, this is beans. So likewise, the different types of grains he can clearly recognize, clearly identify. Similarly, now when someone is doing that kind of a little experiment, I mean, he understands this bag is not some one unit. It is some kind of a combination. It's a kind of an assembly. It's a kind of an accumulation of so much of grains. It's a grain bag. So that consists of so many different types of grains. So he has this proper understanding. While everything is inside the bag, you don't know what is really inside. But when you take a bunch of grain to your hand, by putting your hand through one of the opening, then you can clearly see what is available on your hand. And you can clearly recognize, okay, this is peas, this is say green peas, this is red rice, whatever it is, you can clearly recognize. So as a result, that compactness, what sometimes we call as ganasanya, going to break. We actually create, or we make our mind lustful because of this compactness view. We consider the whole body as one thing. It belongs to me, it belongs to him, it belongs to her. So likewise we have this compactness view. But here, when we have this proper understanding, it's a kind of an accumulation of various bodily components, various bodily parts. We can't have that kind of a lustful thought maintained for a long time. Then mind comes to the middle. Now, in another warning level, I have to tell that we should not practice this as a continuous kind of a practice whenever our mind is free from lust. Because if the mind is free from lust, and if it is in a very middle equanimous situation, no point of practicing this again and again, because then mind even can become depressed. So that is not the idea. So when you are analyzing, or when you are considering this Buddha's simile, so Buddha didn't want us to go to any kind of a depression. Rather, Buddha wants us to come to the middle level, kind of the balanced attitude, where we have the proper perspective about the body. Not a kind of a deluded perspective, or kind of an elevated perspective, or false perspective, rather kind of a real perspective. This body consists of various bodily parts. There is nothing to desire, there is nothing to attach, nothing to grasp. So then we have the proper perspective. Then the mind calms down. Then the mind becomes equanimous. Not depressed, but equanimous. So this equanimous mind is more conducive for the mindfulness practice. It is not sort of an elated or lustful or resentful. Rather, mind is peaceful, calm, and more in an equanimous state. So when the mind is in an equanimous state, then we can further improve it, further develop it using various other techniques. Now Buddha says, when we are practicing like this kind of a practice, when we are continuing this kind of a practice, then that too actually result in keeping our attention closer to the body, keeping our attention very much attached to the body. Because again and again we are having a kind of a proper understanding, kind of a real view about the body, real understanding about the body, and as a result mind keeps on sort of contemplating about the body, keeps on attached to the body, not in a desired manner, not in a sort of a lustful manner, but with a sort of a relaxed, attached manner. Now here one advantage is, so this kind of practice help us to avoid lust or remove lust if in case our mind is already lustful. On the other hand, this kind of practice help us to reduce the compactness view, ganasanya. So this is much closer to the vipassana, because in vipassana, rather than we see things as one unit, we are able to understand it's a kind of a combination, it's a kind of an accumulation. So instead of the compactness view, now the compactness is broken, and it's a kind of a so much of little components comes together, it appear like one thing. So this is a kind of an insight that we can gain. Actually, this insight is further improved, further enhanced using the element meditation, dhatu manasikara. So we can take that on next day. And here we need to understand that these practices are quite beneficial in order to balance our mind. So when mind is in a very lustful position, lustful situation, it is difficult to practice mindfulness. So at that time, these kind of techniques can be used to calm down, can be used to take it to the proper perspective. On the other hand, if the mind is sort of sad, regretting, even that situation, it is difficult to practice mindfulness, basically for a beginner. Now, even at that time, we have to elevate the mind. We have to take it back to the middle. So there we can practice, say, Buddha Anusati, maybe something about our own sila, reflecting about the sila, reflecting about something what we didn't, something good we didn't. So likewise, we have to elevate the mind. We have to raise it up. We have to satisfy the mind. We have to somewhat generate some amount of happiness in the mind. So likewise, different techniques are introduced by the Buddha in order to bring our mind to the middle range, which is the most comfortable zone for the mind to stay. So once it is in this comfortable zone, then we can go for further improvement of our mindfulness, maybe using Anapanasati, maybe using rising and falling, maybe using say Dhatu Manasikara. So likewise, various other techniques can be used to further refine mindfulness. So likewise, so we need to practically use these various techniques in our meditation so that we can get the maximum benefit. So with that information, I like to conclude today's short Dhamma sermon. So now I open the session for questions.
Avasai Bante, there are 3 questions current.
Yeah.
Question number 1 is walking mindfulness. Dear Bante, I start the walking practice paying attention to the left and right soles of the foot. I can clearly observe the sensations such as pressure on the soles and how it distributes, roughness of the carpet on the floor, the hot and cold nature in different parts of the sole. Once the mind settles, these sensations blur a bit, and I notice your explanations in the previous question and answer session, which were very valuable in order for me not to get panicked due to these changes. Once the mind settles, and when I can be at ease with the walking process consistently, it seems to be in the automatic walking mode you described. Time to time, I tend to go back to the sole of the foot and start observing details again. When this happens, the walking slows down a lot, and it seems I am on a slow motion, trying to complete the lifting, moving forward, placing the foot with a lot of effort. I don't know if this is slowing down. I don't know if this slowing down happens naturally, or it happens because I look at the details again deliberately. I don't know due to the slowing down. I don't know due to the slowing down that I can see the details, or due to the details that I slow down. How can I get through this ambiguity? Should I be fine-tuning attention to this to find the answer, or just ignore my ambiguity? Much merits for your guidance. That's the end.
Yeah. So actually, this is a quite common situation where when we want to see more details, so it produces sort of slowing down. So this is unavoidable because now mind tends to look at some minute details, so we can't see them if we are walking fast. So naturally the speed become less and less. So there is no harm actually. But only thing is, it is not the intention that we are taking it to the front. It is not that intentionally we are slowing down. Rather, the main focus is to recognize various minute details of the phenomena. But as a result, naturally the speeding slows down. Our walking slows down. So if it is happening like that, no harm. You can simply ignore this ambiguity, rather continue a practice because it is quite common. I mean, when we are walking naturally in a typical pace, then we may able to recognize some amount of detail, but when we are go to very subtle level, then the slowing down is quite natural. So therefore, nothing to worry. Simply continue a practice.
Question number 2 of 4. This is on sitting mindfulness. Venerable Sir, Last time during the Dhamma sermon, you explained about the posture-based practice as one of the categories of body-based mindfulness, Kayagata Sati-based category, as per your explanation, which is a very profound practice. When I sit for breathing practice, naturally I get to know the sitting posture as a pyramid set up inside me. After some time, I observe very subtle movements within this static posture as a fluid moving through. I tend to ignore this and try to search for the breath, and I find it most of the time and continue with breathing mindfulness. Should I explore the posture-based object which comes naturally? I got this idea when I realized that posture-based practice can also be a deep, profound training after your Dhamma talk. Thank you for conducting this program, and the guidance given is very helpful. That's the end.
Yeah, Chatu, can you repeat the part where sort of that flowing kind of thing is mentioned? The posture I can understand, but something that he or she is experiencing little different.
I'll read that paragraph.
Yeah.
When I sit for breathing practice, naturally I get to know the sitting posture as a pyramid set up inside me. After some time, I observe very subtle movements, watching the static posture as a fluid moving through.
Yeah.
I tend to ignore this and try to search for the breath and find it most of the time and continue with breathing mindfulness.
Yeah. So actually now,
That makes sense.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I understand. Now basically now different practices are there as we are learning here using Kayagata Sati. So when we are keeping our attention towards the body, so we can recognize maybe say breathing. So this is one aspect. Maybe simply we can keep on the posture. This is another practice. Maybe we can recognize the breathing. Or there are various minute kind of subtle sensations that we can keep our attention. And the postures also, not only the main four postures, but the very sub-level postures or the minute kind of postures, that also can be utilized. So actually typically Mahasi Sayadaw is keeping his rising and falling technique under the postures, because apart from the four main postures, this rising and falling is another activity of the body. So likewise, you can actually utilize all of these. There is no big harm in switching between various different techniques. Here, say for example, for some time you are keeping your attention on the posture, and now suppose you are in a sitting posture, like a pyramid as you have mentioned. After some time, the mind becomes concentrated. After some time, mind becomes somewhat concentrated to inside the body, as we have discussed in this Kayagata Sati Sutta. Now mind doesn't want to go out. Mind likes to stay with the body. The body has become sort of an anchoring point, abiding place for the mind. So now we can invite the mind to further look at the internal various processes. So that gives a deeper understanding about this body. So say for example, now you can look at the breathing. Now you can look at rising and falling. Now you can look at various elements. So these are actually helping us to refine our mindfulness. So therefore you can start with the posture so that you are restricting your attention to the body, cutting off the outside attention, fairly simplifying your whole experience so that you have to only look at the body. And once that mindfulness is well established, later you can actually further refine your mindfulness by recognizing various other subtle processes, ongoing processes available in the mind. So there is no harm in doing that. So that is what actually we need to do. It is very much like when you are considering one kamatahana, say Anapanasati, Buddha did not stop us at simply recognizing in-breath and out-breath. Rather, he directed us to look at the subtle detail, whether it is long, whether it is short, from which nostril it is going in and out, maybe whether it is cold, whether it is warm. So these are very subtle level information, attributes in the breath. So we are invited to look at like that, invited to search it, invited to examine it, investigate it. Now you are doing something like that. So this is actually helpful. Therefore, if you are able to recognize these subtle information inside the body, no harm. You can continue it.
Question number 3 of 5. This is the theory question. Dear Bhante, with reference to today's Dhamma topic, is it possible to maintain continuous control of the mind, to be mindful of the body at the last moment of one's death? Or is it purely based on karma or possibility? A chance if we have practiced enough. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, this is not the end of the whole situation, whole story. We can further practice. So that's why if we compare Kayagata Sati Sutta and Anapana Sati Sutta, or if we compare Kayagata Sati Sutta with respect to Satipatthana Sutta. Satipatthana Sutta is taking us further deep, where mind can even be released. Mind can be even become independent, not attached with anything in the world. So this is something profound. This is something important. But at the Kayagata Sati Sutta, emphasis is to keep the mind attached to the body, closer to the body. So this is also important in our previous stages of our practice. Now, if one is simply keeping one's attention closer to the body, there are advantages where your mindfulness is established. Your mind is not wavering, you are not mindful, the mind is not jumping here and there. So at the death moment, if our mind become wavering, if our mind become sort of agitated, then the possibility of having a bad repercussion would be high. But on the other hand, using the body, if mind can be fairly calmed down, if the mindfulness is well established, so such firm mindfulness, such a mind actually may produce a better result or better or future life. So there are certain suttas like when one develops mindfulness, so even though one is not able to get some higher results, if still this development actually helps to have a better future life. So that is actually mentioned, I can't remember exactly the sutta name, Sati. So where it is mentioned is that suppose you are practicing mindfulness but still you couldn't do, say, some deep vipassana, but anyway the last moment came, the death moment happened. At that time, because since the mindfulness is established, your mind is not in a deluded state, so the next birth is mostly in a favorable situation. And once you have that favorable situation, Buddha says, there may be various other, say, colleagues coming and helping you to have that understanding back. Suppose you are practicing mindfulness and you passed away and you born in a, say, Tausisa Divya Loka. So now you have so many other companions, they come and tell you, hey guy, come, you are such a practitioner, you are coming from Melbourne, you are coming from Sydney, so likes that. So they give you a good understanding because you are already practicing. You are not a beginner in a way. You are already practiced. Mind is sort of having that potential. So the quick understanding is possible because your mind is not a kind of a dull kind of a mind, not a kind of a blunt kind of a mind, but rather the mindfulness is already developed to some extent. So that developed state of mind can be further enhanced in this new situation. So there are, and on the other hand, there is another sutta where I think it is Rahulovada, one of the Rahulovada suttas. Buddha clearly says, if one practices Anapanasati, the last breath is also done mindfully, not unmindfully, not with a kind of a wavering mind, not with any kind of a disturbed mind, but extremely mindfully one may take the last breath. When we are getting the last breath, one knows, okay, this is the last breath. So he mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out, that's it, gone. So something like that. So this is mentioned in one of the Rahulovada suttas. So Buddha sort of giving benefits of Anapanasati, and if one practices Anapanasati fairly deeply, Buddha says the last moment is also quite mindful. Yeah.
Question number 4 of 5. This is also a theory question. Most Venerable Bhante, this is a question relating to the 32 parts of the body. Just wondering why air, which is in the intestines, and thermal energy or body heat is not included in this. Certainly there are 4 types of the basic elements in the body. So why are only earth and hard elements and the liquid element included, and not some Pali terms here, Vaya and Tejo elements?
Yes.
That's
True. Actually, if we consider some other suttas, say for example Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, Buddha giving another explanation about the body, where he is telling this body consists of 6 elements: earth element, water element, air element, say fire element, space element, and the consciousness element. So they are, I mean, if the water element, earth element is similar, as we have discussed in this Kayagata Sutta. But as you have mentioned, they are the space element and the, say, fire element and air element also included with respect to body parts. Say for example, the outgoing, the ingoing, upgoing air, downgoing air, the air accumulated in the bowels. So likewise various, and the in-breath and out-breath, inhale and exhale. So all are actually related to the air element. And the other hand, as you have mentioned, the body heat, the aging process, the decaying, the digestion, all are happening due to the Tejo Dhatu or the fire element. So that is also included. So in this Kayagata Sutta, it's a kind of a, not the complete view is given, but the main 32 components, 32 parts are given. Actually, this is quite easy for a beginner, because other, say, air element and the Tejo Dhatu, the fire element is little subtle. For a beginner, it could be difficult. But on the other hand, if we consider these 32 parts, it is quite easy for any person. I mean, these are known facts in a way. So when one understanding, or when one constantly contemplating like this, so the compactness, considering this body is beautiful, considering this body is attractive, considering this body is something, one unit, so that compactness going to break. So that is the motive, or that is the goal of the Buddha. It is not that the Buddha wants to give us a more precise scientific view of the body. So that is what in the typical anatomy what we do. So where you go to more deeper information and millions of parts are there in such a view. So that is not the idea here. So Buddha is giving these 32 parts in order to develop some kind of a dispassion, because we are using this practice in order to remove the passion, remove the lust at the moment. Suppose our mind became lustful. So when we contemplate like this, so this already arisen lust going to disappear. So mind become more and more dispassionate. Ultimately it comes to the middle. Ultimately it becomes equanimous. Now no passion, no lust available. So that's why the emphasis is given in this manner. So the idea is to take our mind to the middle comfortable zone, which is free from lust.
Question number 5 of 6. It's a general question. Regarding contemplating on body parts and impurities. Is it okay to do this in the midst of mindfulness practice if we get a lustful thought? That's the end of it.
Actually, this is not the idea. Suppose you are now contemplating, rather, you are now looking at the mind, and you are a good practitioner, you are continuously practicing, and already you have good understanding about the Kayanupassana, and suppose you did some Dhatu Manasikara, and suppose you did some amount of Vedananupassana, now you are looking at the mind, and now you come across a lustful thought. At that level, if you are trying to practice 32 parts, that is wrong. Because at that time, your mindfulness is well established. You have some developed mindfulness. At that time, you don't need to remove lust by applying this kind of a technique. Instead, you simply have to face the lust. You have to look at the lust. You have to be mindful about lust. So that's why in Chittanupassana, Buddha clearly mentioned Saragan va chittang saragan chittanti pajanati. Buddha didn't ask us to remove it. Rather, he asked us to know about lustful thought. Assume there is, anger arisen. So Buddha didn't ask us to practice metta. Rather, he asked us to look at dosa chitta, or this anger, as anger. Sadosang va chittang sadosang chittanti pajanati. Because no more we are going to sort of become a victim of these thoughts, because we already have developed fair amount of mindfulness. So this developed mindfulness helps us to have a kind of a basement, have a kind of a strong, safe place for our practice. While being there, we allow the mind to play a little. At that time, suppose mind is taking a lustful object. As a result, mind becomes lustful. But we are confident now, because we already practice mindfulness, we are able to establish our mindfulness, and while being there, we can simply look at this lust. We can understand lust. By knowing this lust, so we are not feeding lust. We are not becoming a victim of lust. Rather, the lust will fade away. Rather, we are not empowering lust, we are not strengthening lust. As a result, lust becomes weaker and weaker. So therefore, while you are continuing your practice, if your mindfulness is well established, you are now confident about your mindfulness, don't use, Asubha Bhavana, or these 32 parts, in order to remove lust. Instead, you become aware of lust. Be face to face with it. And that way only we can actually have the growth in our practice. It is not we are trying to replace lust with something else. Rather, we are trying to recognize lust as lust. It is not my lust, it is simply lust. We are looking at it objectively, and as a result, it will start to fade away.
Question number 6 of 7. This is just a general question about the theory part. Someone asked if we can have the PDF file, Bhante, that you're using.
Sure.
Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll upload it soon. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Question number 7 of 7. Mindful sitting. Most Venerable Bhante, this relates to seated meditation. Recently, on 2 occasions, whilst in seated meditation, I experienced something unique. Both the sessions were done outdoors, where I sat under a tree while seated on a bench. I saw bright lights through my eyes, which were closed, but involuntary movements of body parts. On one occasion, the art, I'm not sure what that word is, the art corner of my mouth started twitching repetitively for about 10 minutes. On the other occasion, my left leg started jerking involuntarily as if I was having a fit. But both occasions were extremely pleasurable experiences and very enjoyable, though unexplained. What is the explanation for these experiences, please? Should one expect these during meditation? Though I would have liked to experience these again, they have not happened since. Did the outdoor setting influence these? Apologies for so many queries. Most grateful for your clarification.
Yeah, so basically, so if you have an open environment, so that is much beneficial, because when we are connected with the environment, when we are being with the nature, so that is more beautiful, or that is more conducive for our development, that is more conducive for our spiritual development. So that is why, I mean, if you can practice while being at such kind of a setup, that is actually good. And on the other hand, when you practice, say, anapanasati while being on such environment, so easily your mind get concentrated, easily your mind get elated, or sort of elevated to some higher levels. So mind calms down quickly, and with no time you may be getting to this pīti patisangvedi asasi samiti sikkati, sukha patisangvedi asasi samiti sikkati. If you can go back to your anapanasati sutta, there you can understand. So Buddha is explaining 16 steps. The 5th step is pīti patisangvedi. 6th step is sukha patisangvedi. One is aware of rapture. One is aware of the happiness, comfort. So this is what actually you are experiencing. So when mind calms down and the breath calms down, so now a different kind of feelings going to arise. It is not that we are generating them, but as a result of calm down bodily processes, or calm down bodily formations, now interpret like kind of a happiness, kind of a pleasurable feelings, and we can simply be with them. So Buddha asks us to look at them objectively rather than sort of become greedy of them. So this is the small mistake that you did, where you want to have them. So then the craving going to arise. So craving is counteracting with this samadhi, or the developed calmness, tranquility. Now instead of developing that kind of an expectation, that kind of a craving, so you simply let go of the craving. You simply drop the craving. Don't expect anything. Rather simply continue a practice like a beginner, with a very soft mind, with a very relaxed mind, not expecting anything. Then you may be able to again experience this kind of a beautiful state. So therefore, while sitting, while practicing your meditation, if you are trying to expect various beautiful, blissful states, it is most probably you won't get them. So Buddha's teaching is very beautiful in that way. So if we crave for something, if we become greedy of something, it may not come our way. But on the other hand, if we have an opening, if we have a relaxed mind, if we have a sort of letting go kind of mind, then mostly the benefits may come on our way. Yeah.
Question number 8 of 10, I think. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, earlier you talked about lustful thoughts. As a layperson, if we are engaging in pleasurable activities like dining out or seeing friends, is it better to meditate earlier or on a separate day at a dedicated time? With metta.
Can you repeat the last part, Chatu? If you are dining out, I didn't get the point. So you are muted. I can't hear.
Sorry. As a layperson, if we are engaging in pleasurable activities
Yes.
like dining out or seeing friends,
Yeah.
is it better to meditate earlier or on a separate day at a dedicated time with metta? That's the end.
Now, actually, this is not. I mean, when you are with a friend, if you have a sort of some happy feeling, it is not that you have to develop asubha there. So rather, suppose you are now going to develop mindfulness, or you are now going to say practice. Now the practicing time has arrived, and at that time you understood now the mind is not yet prepared for that. because mind is going through some lustful thoughts. So there you can utilize this technique in order to take it to the middle. Then you can continue your practice. So therefore, it is not that you need to change the whole routine, change the whole timetable, schedule. Rather, when you are going to practice, at that time you can look at the mind. You can check the state of the mind, the mood of the mind. Accordingly, you can use various techniques to bring it to the middle level, middle range, which is more comfortable, more conducive for further development. Yeah.
Question number 9 of 10. This is a bit general question. It just says, when we realize it's anger, what do we do next? That's the
end. So actually, it depends. Now, if you are not mindful, so you may even hit the person. You may even blame the person. That is where we are unmindful. But when you know that mind is now going through anger, rather than reacting, rather than going through sort of any kind of reaction, you can recognize this anger. So recognizing anger is one state. Knowing anger is necessary. You don't need to hide it. You don't need to suppress it. You can know it. So in order to know it, basically you have to have some amount of practice. Because if you are lack of practice, if you don't have mindfulness, when you become angry, you may even blame another person, you may even hit another person, and ultimately when you are regretting about it, then only you know about it. Because you are throughout the whole process, you are completely unmindful. But on the other hand, when you develop mindfulness, before you become regret, you can know about it. And when the mind is angry, you know about it. And more you develop mindfulness, so this recognition may happen at earlier stages. The mind may not going to burn as before, because you are able to catch it at its earlier stages, at its inception. So that's the point. Yeah.
Question number 10 of 10, I think. General question. Venerable Bhante, do you have any advice to help me avoid getting mentally rattled when someone is unjustifiably rude to me at work or in a study context? That's the end of the question.
Different techniques are there. So, say for example, so as our session is more little biased towards mindfulness, so we can take a mindful approach here. So actually I can remember in one of the Satipasala session, one little girl is telling that when her friends are trying to bully her, so she very much become like a tortoise, taking all the legs, arms inside the hull. So she was able to come to inside, rather than becoming angry, rather than trying to react. She was able to establish mindfulness and come inside. So this is one approach actually. So actually I can remember Bhante Dhammaji was telling one of his own experience, where he used to participate one of the meditation sessions as a layman long time ago. At that time he was actually we can say a student, or as a companion of this one of the meditation masters in Nilambe, Mr. Godwin Samararatna. So one occasion, two other people, they are actually professors, but they had an argument about some matter. So it's becoming a heated argument, and one has now taken a chair to hit the other person. So at that time, rather than reacting, so Mr. Godwin was able to establish mindfulness and come back to himself. So now there is no person to look at the situation. Only the witness is Mr. Godwin, and now he entirely taken all his limbs inside. Something like that. So there are different approaches may be available. So when you are angry, you can practice mindfulness, you can avoid reacting, and you can bring your attention back to the body. So that is one approach. That is actually a good approach, because then you are not accumulating bad merit, or rather bad unwholesome karma. Because if you are reacting, then there's a high possibility that you accumulate bad karma. But on the other hand, if you are able to restrain yourself, if you are able to be patient about the situation, if you are able to establish mindfulness and come back to the body, so this is a good approach. On the other hand, you can practice metta. That is another approach. So, and on the other hand, you can sort of rationalize the situation, like, okay, that the other person has become angry, he's deluded, he's not well mannered. So, I mean, he didn't have sort of a good companionship, or didn't have kalyana mittas to guide him. So that is why he is getting angry like this. That is why he is trying to sort of argue with me. So likewise, we can look at the situation in a different manner, so that we are not sort of accusing the other person. We are not sort of finding fault with the other person. So these are different techniques available. So you can apply whatever is coming as the first technique in the list. Yeah.
Bhante, I think that's the last of the questions for today.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an announcement that I need to make. So in Australia, there's daylight saving times next week, or it's beginning. So for the Australian eastern states, so that's New South Wales and Victoria, we aren't changing the start time. They'll still start at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. in the afternoon. But what that means for Sri Lanka, currently we start the program at 1:30 on Sunday. So that'll mean that we're starting 1 hour earlier. So we'll start at 12:30. If you're in other parts of the world, we'll be starting basically 1 hour earlier. Bhante is going to join the program at 1 p.m. Sri Lankan time, basically after the walking session. If Bhante has other programs, we'll adjust to suit, but we'll let you know when this happens. Do you have any comments about that, Bhante?
So basically, I mean, do I have to change the time? That means, so next time I have to join from here at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. from Sri Lanka time. So basically, we have the whole day. We don't have this daylight saving. So
I think it means Bhante, you'll start 1 hour earlier.
1 hour earlier. I see. Okay, next day is that is but that won't be possible, Chatu. That won't be possible, because on next Sunday, that is 4th, I'll be in Lanka Vipassana conducting the retreat. So at that time, actually, they have the question and answer session. So actually, I can only join with you maybe for 1 hour. That may be from 2 to 3. So I have to limit the participation on next week. So actually, you can start the session little earlier as you suggested, but give me little freedom, there little flexibility there to join with you at about 2 p.m. Sri Lanka time. And again, I will conduct the short Dhamma sermon and maybe the question and answer session. And I need to sort of reduce it to 1 hour, because I'll be in the Lanka Vipassana 1-day retreat.
Auntie, I might give to you if you want to have any comments about that.
Yeah. Suranga, you want to say something on that? Yeah, I think we'll do a guided walking set. So we will extend the walking time and have the guided sitting session as well.
Yeah, I think.
So that we still start at, so we'll be starting at 7:30 then, the Dhamma talk.
Yeah, okay. So just a little flexibility is necessary on that day. So I think everything would be fine then. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay then. Okay, thank you very much for participation. Chatu, you can conclude the session.
Okay, just
Yeah.
before I do, I have a special message. So some of you may have noticed there's some internet connections issues in the past few weeks. And so we'd like to thank Nirupa from Wagga, which is in New South Wales, Australia. She has helped set up an antenna in Bante's kuti with some help from some Sri Lankan contacts. So we'd like to pass merits to you. With that, I'd like to sum up the session. So we had a good range of questions. We had some interesting ones about day-to-day activities or general questions. But it's good that we're still getting a lot of active involvement. And also, I think one of the questions even come in during the discussion. So people are actively thinking about what's happened and putting questions, which is great. So with that, I'd like to sum up and thank Bante for giving valuable time. I know it'll be very busy, as we see for next week as well. So very limited opportunities for Bante to give an input into this program. So we'd like to pass merits to Bante and also to the organisers and others seen and unseen who have helped out with this program. And lastly to all the participants, because without you this program wouldn't happen. So with that, I'd like to sum up the program. Thero and Saranai.
Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu. Theruvan Sarnai.